Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today I wanted to talk about the future of arena shooters. In the past few years, there's been a resurgence of fast-paced FPS titles calling themselves arena shooters, but unlike their predecessors, the newer arena shooters often feature custom loadouts, kill streaks, leveling, and class-based heroes. So the question is, are arena shooters making a comeback? Unreal Tournament's ongoing pre-alpha is probably the closest thing out right now to a classic arena shooter. It's got tons of cosmetic customization options, but doesn't feature any custom loadouts or killstreak rewards. Aside from its cobbled together user interface, it does feel very polished and complete, but it's so rooted in the old school arena game design philosophy that I don't know if it actually appeals to today's gamers. FPS games have gotten much more sophisticated since Unreal and Quake games were king of the pile, and so have gamers. Shooting mechanics have developed personalities and character. Aiming down sights and how it affects your accuracy versus hip firing is a skill set unto itself that adds depth and complexity to what is basically aim, shoot, and kill. Map design in particular has greatly matured, whereas most arena shooters used to be mainly corridor shooters with very limited open areas and linear verticality. Today's shooters often feature multi-tiered buildings and massive outdoor levels. Just look at games like Crysis 3 and Battlefield 4, both of which feature lush and full realized environments with tons of buildings. These are things gamers expect these days, so while the new Unreal Tournament certainly delivers a solid gameplay experience, it's the kind of experience that feels familiar to a fault. We've played this game in the past, and if you haven't, it feels a little outdated by games with more modern design. So while I think the new Unreal will appeal to a lot of gamers, and it is a solid game of its own, compared to other games, it just feels a little out of place and outdated. Certainly not in the graphics department, but just from the basic game design fundamentals. This is an issue that games like Lawbreakers are trying to solve. By mixing in elements of hero-based and arena shooter games, Lawbreakers is trying to find a balance between old school gameplay and modern game design. The issue is that Lawbreakers is very generic feeling at the end of the day. Even though it's a class-based game, 3 of the 4 classes felt relatively similar and not that interesting overall, and the game modes felt kind of haphazardly put together. Lawbreakers still has a long road ahead of it before it's finished, and I'm assuming a lot of changes will be made in between now and then. So we'll have to wait and see if people really do like it when it's a complete product. Now, another game that sort of loosely fits the definition of arena multiplayer shooter, aside from the fact that it had an incredible single player, we have Doom. Now, it's a little tricky to critique Doom's multiplayer because they sort of claim that it was designed for a more casual audience, yet the entire DLC and expansion rollout for this game is based around the multiplayer. So they're sort of under the assumption that more people would be playing the multiplayer. Unfortunately, the game suffers from being just sort of a knockoff of Halo meets Call of Duty meets sort of Quake. There's elements from all different games that kind of have arena-like feels to them, but it doesn't really evoke any sort of unique, interesting gameplay. And I think I've been particularly critical of this game's multiplayer because if there was any game to bring back the arena shooter, Doom was it. It had such a good single-player campaign and such big hype for it, and such a big success in that department, yet the multiplayer has fallen so far from being anything decent that it's just sort of lost its opportunity to revive the arena shooter, if there ever really was an opportunity to do so. So when critics of arena shooters begin to talk about them, they can point to Doom as a game with widespread appeal that failed to revive the arena shooter genre, wholly ignoring the fact that its multiplayer wasn't even developed by id, which, you know, is id's fault at the end of the day for outsourcing their multiplayer. Apparently they've taken it back under their wing. We'll have to see what happens with it. Now sure, I can sit here and bring up a lot of games that I don't think are going to revive the arena shooter genre because of poor game design, but what about games that actually had really good game design overall and still didn't succeed? When Crysis 3 launched, I think it had some of the best arena shooter style gameplay that I have played in any modern shooter. It was fast paced, you were able to jump all around the map, had a very high skill curve, and at the same time added cool new elements like being able to switch your nanosuit into different modes, whether it was stealth, speed, extra strength for high jumps, extra defense for absorbing more damage. You had to really understand these cool new mechanics to become better at the game. Yet despite thoroughly enjoying the gameplay when it first came out, sure enough I lost interest, and so did everybody else, and not too much time at all. Now you could blame it on technicalities, the netcode wasn't great, there was no progression system, but I think there's an underlying issue here that's sort of been a cultural shift in gaming for a while now, and that's that teamwork has really taken over as the driving force in the first-person shooter genre. All the successful esports shooters right now involve a good amount of teamwork, and all the upcoming ones that look really cool are definitely team-based games. If you look at some gameplay from, say, Blizzard's new Overwatch, which is hugely successful so far, it's incredibly fast-paced and skill-based on the level that an arena shooter would be, yet it has a huge amount of teamwork worked into the game, so it's not really an arena shooter by definition, and people love it. I think the teamwork element of it is actually the best part of the game. Working with teammates, balancing classes against each other, it makes it incredibly fun. Working together with teammates also offers an element of complexity that I think the modern gamer really seeks. If you can counter other classes, work with teammates to try and counter bigger obstacles or objectives, it adds a new element of complexity and fun. Going back in time to play some old school arena shooters like Quake 3 or Unreal Tournament can be fun, and it can certainly pull on those nostalgia strings, but it doesn't keep the modern gamer entertained for long, and a lot of that just has to do with how simple things were back in the day. Now, I'm not sure if the modern resurgence of arena shooters is sort of older gamers getting nostalgic about things and wanting to bring back some of the high skill games that they used to play back in the day. The only problem is that, high skill isn't everything these days. Strategy and teamwork has really taken over a huge part of the competitive first-person shooter scene, and so many people are interested in that. Once you take away strategy and teamwork and make it mostly about skill, the game becomes less interesting to watch, and for me personally, less interesting to play. I don't doubt that there might be a few arena shooters that achieve some level of success over the next few years, but I don't think they're ever going to be able to take on the big boys like Battlefield or Counter-Strike or Overwatch at this point, simply because they don't have that cool element of teamwork. Or maybe the successful arena shooters really will incorporate a much bigger element of teamwork, and people will want to watch them for that reason. Either way, I think it's a really interesting subject matter because everyone's always looking for the next big thing in an ever-changing gaming market. A lot of people have been betting that arena shooters are going to come back, and it's hard to say whether or not they're right. I think with the current batch of arena shooters out there, there aren't any big hits there, so someone's going to have to redefine the genre, in which case it might not even be an arena shooter anymore. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Why do you think there's such a big resurgence in developers making arena shooters? Why do you think none of them have taken off in any sort of big way? And do you think arena shooters will be making a comeback? Let me know in the comments, guys, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.